The text message came at 2:47 a.m. "Sis, can you come over? Please, it's important." I stared at my phone, my heart already racing. My twin sister Maya never texted in the middle of the night. Maya was the responsible one, the one with the perfect life. Husband, house in Brookhaven, marketing career. The one who always had everything figured out. I was Zara, the wild twin, the artist living in a downtown loft, painting until 3 a.m. and sleeping until noon. We were identical in every way. Same face, same voice, same DNA. People couldn't tell us apart even when we were standing right next to each other. But our lives couldn't have been more different. I threw on jeans and a hoodie and drove to Maya's house. 20 minutes through empty Atlanta streets, running 2 red lights because something in my gut told me this was an emergency. Something was wrong. I could feel it in that twin connection we'd always had. That invisible thread that tied us together even when we were miles apart. When I pulled up to her house, the porch light was off. The whole street was dark and quiet, just the occasional street lamp casting long shadows. Maya's house looked perfect from the outside. Manicured lawn, expensive cars in the driveway, the kind of house that screamed success and happiness. But I knew better now. I walked up to the front door and knocked softly, not wanting to wake the neighbors. "Maya, it's me." The door cracked open just a few inches, and Maya's face appeared in the gap. Even in the darkness, even with just that sliver of light from inside, I could see something was terribly, horribly wrong. "Come in, quickly." I slipped inside, and Maya closed the door behind me, locking it twice. Then she turned on one small lamp in the living room. Not the overhead lights, just that one lamp, like she was afraid someone might see us from outside. That's when I saw her face clearly. My breath stopped. The world tilted. Maya's left eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it a deep purple that was already turning black and yellow at the edges. There was a cut on her lip, the blood dried and crusted. A bruise was forming along her entire jawline, dark and angry like someone had hit her with their full force. Her right arm had fingerprint-shaped marks around the wrist. 5 distinct circles where someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave marks that would last for days, maybe weeks. "Oh my God." I reached for her, but she flinched back instinctively before she could stop herself. That automatic recoil, that fear response, broke my heart more than the bruises. "Maya, who did this to you?" I fell down the stairs." Her voice was barely above a whisper, and she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. "Don't lie to me." I grabbed her shoulders gently, carefully, looking into her eyes that were identical to mine but filled with a pain and fear I'd never seen there before. "Maya, please, who did this to you?" Maya's face crumpled. Her whole body seemed to collapse in on itself, like a marionette with its strings cut. "Zara, was it Darnell?" Silence. But I saw the truth in her eyes before she said a word. I saw the shame and the fear and the exhaustion. Darnell, her husband of 3 years, the man who'd seemed so perfect when they started dating, successful, charming, the kind of man who always knew the right thing to say, the man who'd proposed with a diamond ring that cost more than my yearly income, the man our parents absolutely loved, calling him the son we never had, and the best thing that ever happened to Maya. The man who'd swept her into a life that looked perfect from the outside. "How long?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage I was trying to control. 6 months. Maya's voice broke. Maybe longer. It's hard to remember exactly when it started because it was so gradual. It started so small I didn't even recognize it as abuse at first. Just pushing me during an argument, grabbing my arm a little too hard when he was angry, squeezing my wrist until I cried and said I was sorry. Then it got worse. It always gets worse, Zara. It never gets better. 6 months. My twin sister, my other half, the person I'd shared a womb with, had been suffering for 6 months, and I hadn't known. I hadn't seen it. How had I not seen it? Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she was shaking. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just tried harder, if I was a better wife, if I didn't make him angry, if I could just figure out what I was doing wrong and fix it. Stop. I pulled her into a hug, being so careful not to hurt her injuries. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. You know that, right? But even as I said it, I didn't yet know the full truth. I didn't know just how bad things had gotten. I didn't know what Maya had been hiding from everyone. From me, from our parents, from her friends, from the world that thought she had the perfect marriage. And I definitely didn't know what I was about to do about it. Flashback. 1995. Zara, look, we're exactly the same. 7-year-old Maya stood in front of the bathroom mirror, grinning from ear to ear. She'd put her hair in the same ponytail as mine, tied with the same purple ribbon, wearing the same purple Easter dress Mom had bought us. That's because we're twins, silly, I said, but I was grinning too. We'd always loved being identical. It was like having a superpower. In elementary school, we used to switch classes just to see if the teachers would notice. They never did. Maya would go to my music class and pretend to be me, and I'd go to her art class and pretend to be her, and we'd come home giggling about our secret, about how we'd fooled everyone. When we grow up, Maya said, her voice getting serious the way it always did when she was thinking about the future. We're going to live next door to each other, in houses that are exactly the same, and our kids will be best friends who play together every single day, and we'll never, ever be apart. Not ever. Never, I agreed, linking my pinky with hers the way we always did for our most important promises. Twin promise. Twin promise forever, Maya said solemnly, like we were making a sacred vow. Present day. Where's Darnell now? I asked, pulling back to look at Maya's face again, trying to catalog all the injuries I could see and dreading what I couldn't see. Business trip, Chicago, some big deal he's working on. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 3:15 a.m. He won't be back until Sunday night. That gives us 4 days. 4 days. 4 days to figure out what to do, how to get Maya out of this nightmare, how to protect her from a man who was supposed to love her, but was instead destroying her piece by piece. You're leaving him, I said. It wasn't a question. It's not that simple, Zara. You don't understand. Maya's voice was hollow, defeated. He controls everything. The bank accounts, the credit cards, the car is in his name. I don't have any money of my own. He monitors my spending. I have to show him receipts for everything, even groceries. And if I try to leave, she touched her bruised face with trembling fingers. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd kill me. And Zara, I believe him. When he said it, his eyes were so cold, like he was talking about something as simple as taking out the trash. He meant it. I'd heard about abusers like Darnell. I'd read articles, seen documentaries about men who isolated their victims, controlled their finances, made them dependent in every way so they couldn't escape. But hearing about it in the abstract was completely different from seeing my own sister, my twin, my other half, trapped in it. We'll figure it out, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I promise you, Maya, we're going to get you out of this. Darnell is not going to hurt you ever again. How? How are we going to do that? I don't know yet, but we will. Stay here tonight. You can sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, when we're both rested and can think clearly, we'll make a plan. We went upstairs to the guest bedroom, and Maya winced with every step, moving carefully like someone who was in pain all over their body. That's when I realized her injuries weren't just the ones I could see on her face. "Maya, what else did he do to you? Show me." She hesitated, then slowly, carefully pulled up her shirt. I had to bite my lip hard enough to taste blood to keep from screaming. Her ribs were covered in bruises. Purple, yellow, green, brown. A horrifying rainbow that told the story of multiple beatings over time. Recent injuries layered on top of older ones that hadn't fully healed yet. 2 weeks ago, he kicked me, she said quietly, almost clinically, like she was talking about someone else's body. Multiple times. In the ribs. In the back. I think he might have cracked a rib, maybe 2. But I couldn't go to the doctor because he'd want to know why I was going, and he always knows when I'm lying. He'd punish me for going behind his back. That's it. I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police right now." "No!" Panic flooded her eyes, and she grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. "You can't. Zara, you don't understand. Darnell has friends on the police force. He plays golf with a lieutenant every Sunday. They go to the same gym. Even if they arrested him, he'd be out in hours on bail, and then he'd come back. And it would be so much worse. It's always worse when I fight back. Always." I could see the terror in her eyes. Real, bone-deep terror that went beyond the physical pain. "Okay," I said, forcing myself to calm down even though I wanted to rage and scream. "Okay. No police. Not yet. But Maya, we're going to fix this. I swear to you, he's not going to get away with this." That night, I lay awake in Maya's guest room while she slept fitfully in the master bedroom down the hall. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house settling, thinking about my sister, about Darnell, about how someone could hurt the person they claimed to love, about how he'd systematically destroyed her confidence, isolated her from everyone who could help her, made her believe she was trapped. That's when the idea started to form. Slowly at first, then faster, pieces clicking together in my mind like a puzzle. We were identical twins, not just similar, identical. Even our own parents sometimes had trouble telling us apart when we were kids. We'd spent our whole lives fooling people, switching places, pretending to be each other. What if we used that now? What if Maya and I switched places? I could pretend to be her for a few days. And when Darnell came home from his business trip expecting his terrorized, submissive wife, he'd get me instead. And I'd be ready for him. I'd make him show his true nature on camera, get evidence that the police couldn't ignore, and finally give Maya a way out. I'd make him regret ever laying a hand on my sister. The next morning, I found Maya in the kitchen, sitting at the table and staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The morning light streaming through the windows made her bruises look even worse, more vivid and shocking. "I have an idea," I said, sitting down across from her. "And you're going to think I'm completely crazy. After the night I've had, try me. What if we switched places?" Maya looked at me like I'd suggested we fly to the moon. "What?" "Think about it, Maya. We're identical twins. We've fooled people our entire lives. Teachers, boyfriends, even mom and dad. What if you came to stay at my loft for a few days, and I moved in here and pretended to be you? When Darnell gets back on Sunday, I'll be here instead of you." "Zara, that's insane. That's actually insane." "Is it? Darnell has never met me, right? In 3 years of marriage, you've kept us completely separated. He doesn't know what I look like, how I act, what my personality is. And even if he did, we're twins. I could pass for you easily." "But why? What would that accomplish besides putting you in danger?" "I want him to show his true colors with me. I want him to lose his temper, to try to hurt me, and I'll record the whole thing. Get real evidence on video. Then we can go to the police with proof they can't dismiss or sweep under the rug for their golf buddy. He'll hurt you, Zara. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. When he loses his temper, it's like a switch flips and he becomes a completely different person. His eyes go dead and cold, and he doesn't stop until— I can handle myself, I interrupted. I took self-defense classes for 3 years, remember? Krav Maga. I know how to fight back against someone bigger and stronger, and I'm not scared of him the way you are. Not because you're weak, but because he's spent 3 years systematically breaking you down and making you believe you're helpless. But I'm not broken. I'm not helpless. And I'm going to make him pay for what he's done to you. This is too dangerous. What if he figures it out? What if he realizes you're not me? You don't know what he'll do. Doing nothing is dangerous too. Letting you go back there and hoping it doesn't get worse is dangerous. Maya, he's escalating. You said it yourself. It keeps getting worse, never better. What happens the next time he loses his temper? What if next time he kicks you, he doesn't just crack a rib? What if he ruptures something internal? What if he goes too far and you don't wake up? I saw the fear in her eyes because she knew I was right. She'd been thinking the same thing, lying awake at night wondering if this time would be the time he went too far and killed her. I don't want you to get hurt because of me, Maya whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. You're my twin, my other half, my person. I would do anything for you. Walk through fire, fight a grizzly bear, take on your abusive husband, whatever it takes. You know that. We sat in silence for a long moment. The kitchen clock ticked loudly. Outside, I could hear birds chirping, the sound of normal life continuing while we sat here discussing something that felt surreal and terrifying. Then Maya spoke, her voice quiet but determined. Okay, let's do it. Let's switch places. Flashback. 2020. Maya, I want you to meet someone. Our mother's voice was excited, practically glowing. It was Thanksgiving dinner, and the whole family was gathered at our parents' house. This is Darnell Williams. He's the son of your father's friend from church. He just moved back to Atlanta after working in New York for 5 years. Darnell stepped forward with a smile that could light up a room. He was tall, well-dressed, confident. When he shook Maya's hand, he held it just a moment longer than necessary. It's a pleasure to meet you, Maya. Your mother has told me so much about you. I watched from across the room as Maya blushed, as Darnell charmed her with stories about his job in finance, his apartment in Manhattan, his plans to settle down and start a family now that he was back home. I watched as he pulled out her chair at dinner, as he laughed at her jokes, as he asked thoughtful questions about her marketing career and actually seemed to listen to the answers. I watched my sister fall for him, and I was happy for her. Darnell seemed perfect, successful, charming, respectful, ambitious. Everything our parents had always said they wanted for us. I never suspected that the charming man at Thanksgiving dinner was the same man who would one day put my sister in the hospital. None of us did. Present day. Over the next 3 days, Maya and I worked obsessively on perfecting the switch. She taught me everything about her life, and I mean everything, every detail, no matter how small. We started with the basics. Maya cut my hair to match hers exactly, shoulder length with subtle layers that framed the face just so. We practiced her mannerisms, the way she spoke, the way she moved through the house. I had to learn to be Maya, not just look like her. You walk different from me, Maya observed as I crossed the living room for what felt like the 100th time. You're more confident. Your shoulders are back. Your stride is longer. You take up space. I move smaller now, more controlled, like I'm trying not to take up any space at all. Show me. Maya stood up and walked across the room, and my heart broke watching her. Her movements were tiny, constrained, almost like she was trying to make herself invisible. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her steps short and careful, her arms held close to her body. She moved like someone who was always calculating, always trying to predict the next blow and minimize it. It was horrifying to see how Darnell had changed her, how he'd made her afraid of her own body. I practiced walking like her, moving like someone who was always on eggshells, always trying to avoid setting off a bomb. It felt wrong, constrictive, but I had to get it right. The details Maya taught me were horrifying in their specificity. Dinner had to be ready at exactly 6:30 p.m., not 6:25, not 6:35, 6:30 sharp, or Darnell would accuse her of being disrespectful of his time. The steak had to be cooked to exactly medium rare. The house had to be spotless, not just clean, but spotless, with everything in its proper place. He checks, Maya explained. He runs his finger along the top of the refrigerator to check for dust. He opens random cabinets to make sure things are organized the way he likes. If he finds something wrong, he says I'm getting lazy, that I'm not holding up my end of the marriage. What about physical affection? I asked, dreading the answer. Maya's face went blank, all emotion draining out of it. He expects me to kiss him when he comes home from work, on the lips, not just a peck on the cheek. He expects me to sit close to him on the couch while we watch TV, like right up against him with his arm around me, usually with his hand on my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a reminder of what he can do. And at night? He usually wants... She couldn't finish the sentence. But if you say you're not feeling well, he might accept it. Once, maybe twice if you're convincing. But after that, he'll get angry. He'll say I'm withholding from him, that I'm breaking my marriage vows. We went through every detail of Maya's life. What side of the bed she slept on, how she took her coffee, what TV shows Darnell liked to watch, what topics were safe to discuss, and which ones would set him off, how to fold his laundry, where she kept the cleaning supplies, what friends she was allowed to talk to, which weren't many. He doesn't like me talking to you, Maya admitted. He says you're a bad influence, that you're trying to make me dissatisfied with my life. That's why I've kept you two separated all this time. He didn't want me seeing you. By Sunday morning, I was as ready as I'd ever be. Maya and I stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom together, and I genuinely couldn't tell which reflection was mine. We were wearing the same clothes, had identical hair. Even our expressions had started to mirror each other during the intense preparation. It's eerie, Maya said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Looking at you is like looking at myself, like looking in a mirror that can move independently. That's the point, I said, squeezing her hand. Maya, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? It's not too late to back out. We can figure out another way. I'm sure. Just, please be careful. Darnell is smart. He pays attention to details. If he figures out what we're doing, if he realizes you're not me. Her voice broke. He won't. I promise you, I've got this. Trust me. I do trust you. That's why I'm letting you do this insane thing. That afternoon, Maya drove to my loft in my car. She'd stay there, safe and hidden, while I faced the monster who'd been terrorizing her for the past year. After she left, I spent the rest of the day preparing the house for Darnell's return. I cleaned obsessively, making sure everything was absolutely perfect. I laid out the dinner ingredients in the exact order I'd need them. I put his favorite bourbon on the bar cart in the living room, positioned exactly where Maya said he liked it. I even changed the toilet paper roll to make sure it hung over instead of under, because apparently that mattered to him. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be exactly as Darnell expected. One wrong detail, one thing out of place, and he might suspect something was off. At 6 p.m., my phone, Maya's phone, I had to remember that now, buzzed with a text from Darnell. Landing in 30 minutes. Be home by 7. Have dinner ready. Not, I can't wait to see you, or I missed you. Just commands. Have dinner ready. My heart started pounding. In 1 hour, I'd be face to face with the man who'd beaten my sister, who'd terrorized her, who'd made her life a living hell. The man who thought he'd broken her completely, and he'd have no idea he was looking at the wrong twin. I took a deep breath and started preparing dinner. But I didn't know yet just how bad things were going to get. I didn't know the full truth about Darnell, about his past, about the other women, about just how dangerous he really was. And I definitely didn't know that tonight would change everything. At 7:12 p.m., I heard the garage door opening. I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly as I plated the steak. I'd cooked it perfectly, exactly medium rare, just like Maya had drilled into me over and over. The mashed potatoes were smooth and creamy, the right consistency. The green beans were prepared exactly the way Darnell liked them. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as he expected. The door from the garage opened. I heard his heavy footsteps, confident and commanding. The sound of his expensive briefcase hitting the floor with a thud. Maya, I'm home. His voice sent chills down my spine. Not because it was particularly threatening. It wasn't. It was actually quite pleasant, warm even. That was what made it so disturbing. This was the voice of a man who hurt his wife, and it sounded perfectly normal. In the kitchen, I called out, keeping my voice soft and pleasant exactly like Maya had taught me. Not too loud, not too enthusiastic. Just pleasant, compliant. Darnell walked into the kitchen, and I got my first good look at my sister's husband in person. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and an athletic build that spoke of regular gym sessions. He was objectively handsome in a conventional way, with rich brown skin, a neat beard, and close-cropped hair. He wore an expensive suit that fit him perfectly, a designer watch that probably cost more than my rent, Italian leather shoes that gleamed. He looked like success personified, like someone who should be on the cover of a business magazine. He looked nothing like a monster, but I knew better. I'd seen what those hands had done to my sister's face, her ribs, her spirit. "Hey, baby," he said, walking over to me with that charming smile. He leaned down to kiss me, and it took every ounce of self-control I had not to pull away, not to show the disgust that was churning in my stomach. I let him kiss me briefly, then turned back to the stove before he could try to deepen it. "Dinner's almost ready. How was your flight?" "Long. Turbulence over Tennessee." He loosened his tie, and I watched as his eyes scanned the kitchen, cataloging everything. "House looks clean." It wasn't a compliment. It was an inspection, an acknowledgement that I'd met his standards. "Thank you. Did you miss me?" "Of course," I said, forcing warmth into my voice as I finished plating his food. Steak on the left side of the plate, potatoes on the right, vegetables at the top, never touching each other. Maya had been very specific about that. Darnell hated it when his food touched. "How was your week?" "Quiet. I missed you." The words tasted like ashes in my mouth, but I forced them out pleasantly. Darnell poured himself a bourbon, exactly 2 fingers in a crystal glass, no ice, while I carried the plates to the dining room. We sat down at the table, him at the head like a king on his throne, me to his right side, never across from him. Maya had explained that too. Darnell didn't like feeling like they were adversaries across a battlefield. I watched nervously as he cut into his steak and took his first bite. This was the test. If I'd overcooked it, even slightly, he'd know something was wrong. He chewed slowly, deliberately, while my heart pounded. Then he nodded. Good. You didn't overcook it this time. This time. Which meant there'd been a previous time when Maya had overcooked it, and he'd probably made her pay for that mistake in bruises and fear. I'm glad you like it, I said, keeping my voice neutral. How's work? He asked, cutting another piece of steak with precise movements. Fine. The Thompson campaign is coming along well. We finalized the media buy on Tuesday, and the client seemed very happy with our strategy. I'd memorized all the details Maya had given me about her job, the clients, the projects, the co-workers, the office politics. Every detail had to be perfect. One slip, one wrong fact, and he might suspect something. That's good. You know I don't like it when you stress about work. It makes you moody and difficult to live with. And I work hard to provide for you. The least you can do is maintain a pleasant atmosphere at home. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood, forcing myself to nod. You're right. I'm sorry. Dinner continued like that for the next 45 minutes. Darnell talking about his business trip, his meetings, his deals, his successes, how brilliant he was. I listened and responded minimally with, "That's amazing," and "You're so smart," and other vapid encouragements. I was struck by how much the conversation revolved entirely around him. He barely asked about Maya's week beyond that initial question. Didn't ask about her feelings, her thoughts, her life beyond how it related to him and his comfort. It was all about him. Always him. Only him. After dinner, I cleared the plates while Darnell went to the living room. I could hear him turning on the TV, the sounds of some cable news show filling the house. When I finished loading the dishwasher, exactly the way Maya had shown me, with plates on the bottom rack, bowls on top, silverware handles pointing down, I joined him in the living room. He was sitting in his recliner, his throne, already settled in with his bourbon. I started to sit on the couch nearby, but he shook his head. Come closer, he said, without looking at me, his eyes still on the TV. I moved to sit beside him on the wide recliner, and immediately his arm came around me, pulling me tight against his side. His grip was firm, not quite painful but possessive, controlling. His fingers moved from my shoulder up to my neck, coming to rest against my throat. Not squeezing, just resting there. But the threat was clear, a constant reminder of his power, of what he could do. I don't like being away from you, he said, his lips against my hair. His breath was hot on my scalp. You know that, right? It's hard for me, being on the road, working these deals. All I think about is coming home to my wife. I know, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, trying not to show how much I hated having his hands on me. You're mine, Maya. You belong to me. I take care of you. I provide for you. I give you everything you need. This house, your car, your clothes, everything. All I ask is that you be a good wife. That's not too much to ask, is it? No, I said, my stomach churning with rage I had to suppress. That's my girl. That's my good girl. We sat like that for over an hour, watching some political talk show I couldn't focus on. His fingers stayed against my throat the entire time. Not squeezing, never squeezing, but always there. I thought about Maya, about how many nights she'd sat exactly like this, feeling those fingers against her throat, knowing what he was capable of, knowing that at any moment those fingers could tighten and squeeze the life out of her. Around 10 p.m., Darnell stood up, pulling me to my feet with him. Let's go to bed. This was the moment I'd been dreading since this whole plan began. Upstairs in the master bedroom, I went into the bathroom to change, needing a moment away from him to compose myself. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked exactly like Maya, but I wasn't Maya. I was stronger. I was ready. I could handle this. I put on the modest pajamas Maya had left for me, long-sleeved shirt and full-length pants, nothing revealing. When I came out of the bathroom, Darnell was already in bed, shirtless, the blankets pulled up to his waist, scrolling through his phone. I climbed into bed, staying as far on my side as possible, facing away from him. Darnell set his phone down on the nightstand and turned toward me. "Come here." My heart was racing. This was it. "I'm not feeling great," I said carefully, making my voice sound weak and apologetic. "My stomach's been bothering me all day. I think I might be coming down with something." His eyes narrowed in the dim light from his phone. "Your stomach?" "Yeah. I feel really nauseous. I'm sorry." For a moment, I thought he was going to push it. I could see the anger flashing across his face, his jaw tightening. But then he relaxed slightly, though his expression remained cold. "Fine. Go to sleep then." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thank you for understanding." "But Maya?" His voice had turned cold now, all the warmth gone. "Don't make this a habit. I'm your husband. I have needs. And you have responsibilities as my wife. When a wife continuously refuses her husband, it makes him wonder what she's doing while he's away, who she might be giving to someone else what belongs to him. I would never. I'd hate to think my wife was being unfaithful. That would be very disappointing. And you know how I get when I'm disappointed." "Yes," I thought, looking at the bruises still visible on what he thought were Maya's wrists. "Yes, I know exactly how you get." "I understand," I said quietly. "Good." He turned off the light, plunging the room into darkness. I lay there stiffly, listening to his breathing gradually slow and deepen as he fell asleep. But I stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling in the dark, my mind racing. I thought about my sister, about this house that was supposed to be her home but had become her prison. I thought about how many nights she'd lain in this same bed, terrified, wondering if tonight would be the night he went too far. And I thought about what I was going to do to Darnell, how I was going to make him pay for everything he'd done, how I was going to destroy him the way he'd tried to destroy Maya. But I had to be patient. I had to be smart. I had to wait for the right moment to catch him in the act, to get irrefutable evidence on camera. That moment would come sooner than I expected, and it would be more dangerous than I'd imagined. The next morning, Darnell was in a surprisingly good mood. He actually smiled at me over the breakfast I'd made. Scrambled eggs and turkey bacon, prepared exactly the way he liked it. "This is good," he said, which was probably the closest thing to a genuine compliment he was capable of giving. "Better than usual." I forced a smile. "I'm glad you like it." "I have meetings all day downtown," he said, checking his phone while he ate. "Might run late. I probably won't be home until 8 or 9 tonight." "Okay, I'll keep dinner warm for you. That's my girl." He stood up, adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, grabbed his briefcase. Then he came back and kissed the top of my head before leaving. "Be good while I'm gone." The words sent a chill down my spine. Be good. Like I was a child or a dog that might misbehave. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway and I heard the garage door close, I grabbed my phone and called Maya. "How did it go?" she asked immediately, her voice tight with worry. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Did he suspect anything?" "I'm fine. He didn't suspect a thing. But Maya, living with him for even one night. I don't know how you've survived this for 3 years. I wanted to punch him in the face every time he opened his mouth." "You get used to it," she said quietly. and the resignation in her voice broke my heart. You learn to make yourself smaller. You learn to anticipate his moods, to give him what he wants before he even asks for it. You learn which topics to avoid, which words trigger him, which facial expressions make him angry. It becomes automatic after a while, like breathing. You just do it to survive. That's not living, Maya. That's just surviving. That's not a life. I know. We talked for another 20 minutes, and I filled her in on every detail of the previous evening. Everything Darnell had said, how he'd acted, the way he'd kept his hand on my throat. Then, after we hung up, I spent the rest of the day doing what I'd come here to do, gathering evidence. I started in Darnell's home office, a room Maya said she was forbidden from entering. The door was always locked when he wasn't home, but Maya had given me the key she'd secretly copied months ago. Inside, the office was immaculate. Expensive desk, leather chair, bookshelves lined with business books and framed photos of Darnell looking successful and important. There were no photos of Maya, I noticed, just photos of him. His laptop sat on the desk, closed. I opened it, and as expected, it required a password. But Maya had told me that Darnell used the same password for everything, his mother's maiden name followed by his birth year, Harrison 73. I typed it in, and the laptop unlocked immediately. What I found in the next hour made my blood run cold. There were files, dozens and dozens of them, hundreds maybe, organized into folders by date, photos of Maya, videos. Some were just normal couple pictures, vacation photos, dinner dates, Maya smiling at the camera. But others were documentation of his abuse, photos of Maya's bruises, taken from multiple angles like a photographer documenting his work. Videos of her cowering on the floor while Darnell's shadow loomed over her, his hand raised to strike. Audio recordings of her sobbing, apologizing, begging him to stop, promising to be better. He'd been documenting it, keeping a detailed record of his abuse like some kind of sick trophy collection, like he was proud of what he'd done to her. But there was more, so much more. I found emails, dozens of emails from other women Darnell had apparently dated before Maya, and in those emails, I found similar stories. One woman, Jessica Martinez, had gotten a restraining order against him after he broke her arm. Another woman, Tasha Williams, had pressed charges for assault that were mysteriously dropped after Darnell's expensive lawyer got involved. A third woman, Keisha Brown, had simply disappeared from social media entirely after dating Darnell for 6 months, like she'd erased herself from the internet to hide from him. Darnell wasn't just an abuser. He was a serial predator with a clear pattern, a method, a history. Maya wasn't his first victim. She wasn't even his second or third. And if we didn't stop him, she wouldn't be his last. I was still scrolling through the files, my hands shaking with rage, taking photos of everything with my personal phone, when I heard something that made my heart stop. The garage door was opening. I looked at my phone. 6:45 p.m. Darnell was home almost 2 hours early. Heart racing, I quickly closed all the windows on the laptop, cleared the browser history out of paranoia, shut it down, and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I rushed out of the office, locked the door behind me, and practically ran downstairs, trying to compose myself, trying to get back into character as submissive, frightened Maya. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Darnell came through the door from the garage, and I knew immediately that something was very, very wrong. His face was flushed red, his jaw was tight, his movements were sharp and aggressive. He dropped his briefcase on the floor with more force than necessary, and I heard something inside it crack. "Hey," I said carefully, forcing my voice to stay pleasant and calm. You're home early. That's nice. I haven't started dinner yet, but I can have it ready in about 30 minutes. Why were you in my office? Ice flooded my veins. The world seemed to tilt. What? I have cameras, Maya. His voice was low and dangerous, the voice of a predator who'd just cornered his prey. Motion-activated security cameras. I got an alert on my phone at 2:37 p.m. that someone was in my office. He pulled out his phone, turning it to show me the screen. There was a grainy but unmistakable image of me sitting at his desk, his laptop open in front of me, clearly using it. I'd been so careful. I'd checked for visible cameras, but I'd never thought to look for hidden ones, tiny ones that could be concealed in smoke detectors or air vents or picture frames. I was looking for some paper, I stammered, my mind racing to come up with a believable excuse. For a grocery list. The pad in the kitchen was empty, and I thought you might have some in your desk. Don't lie to me. Darnell's voice was still quiet, but there was something terrifying in that quietness. It was like the calm before a hurricane, the silence before an explosion. He stepped closer, and I had to fight every instinct not to step back. The desk drawer was closed in the camera image. You were using my laptop. Were you snooping through my things? No. I swear I wasn't. His hand shot out faster than I could react, grabbing my wrist in a crushing grip. I felt something pop, a tendon or ligament giving way. Pain shot up my arm like fire. Let me go, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I wanted to scream. You don't get to tell me what to do. He pulled me closer, so close I could smell the coffee on his breath, could see the rage burning in his eyes. You're my wife. Everything in this house belongs to me. The furniture, the appliances, the food in the refrigerator. And you. You belong to me most of all. And if I catch you snooping through my private things, invading my privacy, disrespecting my boundaries, you'll what? The words came out before I could stop them. Years of rage at what he'd done to my sister overriding my common sense and my plan to stay in character. You'll hit me? Like you've been doing for the past 6 months? Like you did 2 weeks ago when you kicked Maya so hard you cracked her ribs? Darnell's eyes widened in surprise for just a fraction of a second. Then they narrowed with fury, and I saw the exact moment he realized something was wrong. Who are you? His grip on my wrist tightened even more, and I felt another pop, more pain. You're not acting like yourself. Maya would never talk to me like that. Maya knows better than to disrespect me. I don't know what you mean. Maya doesn't talk back. Maya knows what happens when she disobeys me. She's learned her lessons. He pulled me even closer, studying my face with growing suspicion and rage. What's going on? Who put you up to this? Did you hire some kind of actress to? I had to think fast. If he figured out I wasn't Maya, if he realized what we'd done, he might go after her. He might track her down at my loft. He might hurt her even worse than before. I'm sorry, I said, forcing my voice to break, forcing tears into my eyes. I'm so sorry, Darnell. I was just frustrated. Work has been incredibly stressful this week, and I shouldn't have taken it out on you. Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you or invade your privacy. For a moment, just a moment, I thought it had worked. His grip loosened slightly, his expression softening just a fraction. Then his free hand came up and wrapped around my throat. You're lying to me, he said, his voice eerily calm now, almost conversational. I can always tell when you're lying to me, Maya. And you know what happens when you lie to me, don't you? You know what happens when you disrespect me in my own home? His hand tightened around my throat. I couldn't breathe. My vision started to gray at the edges, stars dancing in my peripheral vision. This was it. This was what Maya had lived with for 3 years. This fear, this helplessness, this absolute certainty that the person who was supposed to love you and protect you was going to kill you instead. This was what my sister had endured, night after night, month after month, too scared to leave, too controlled to escape. But I wasn't Maya, and I wasn't helpless, and I wasn't going to let him win. I'd taken Krav Maga classes for 3 years, specifically designed to teach people how to fight back against larger, stronger attackers. And I'd been waiting, hoping, praying for Darnell to make a move exactly like this, so I could finally fight back for both of us. With the last of my strength, using a technique I'd practiced hundreds of times until it was muscle memory, I brought my knee up hard and fast between his legs. Darnell's eyes went wide with shock and pain. His grip on my throat and wrist loosened immediately as he doubled over with a strangled sound. I didn't waste the opportunity. I grabbed the heavy crystal vase from the side table, the expensive Waterford crystal that Maya had told me was a wedding gift from Darnell's mother, worth over $1,000, and I smashed it as hard as I could against the side of his head. The crystal shattered with a satisfying crack. Darnell went down hard, blood immediately streaming from a cut above his ear. He wasn't unconscious, but he was clearly dazed, groaning on the floor, one hand pressed to his bleeding head. I stood over him, my chest heaving, my throat burning where he'd grabbed me, my wrist throbbing with pain. But I felt powerful, strong, alive. "I'm not Maya," I said, my voice raspy from being choked but still clear and strong. "I'm her twin sister, Zara, and you just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life, Darnell." Darnell looked up at me, his expression cycling rapidly through pain, confusion, shock, and finally settling on pure, incandescent rage. "You... what? Where's Maya? What did you do with my wife?" "Maya's safe. She's somewhere you'll never find her, somewhere you can never hurt her again. But me?" I pulled out my phone with my uninjured hand and started recording, making sure to capture his face, the blood, and my injured throat. "I'm going to make sure you pay for everything you did to her. Every bruise, every broken bone. Every night she cried herself to sleep because of you. Every time you made her feel worthless and trapped. You can't. This is my house. You're trespassing. I'll have you arrested. Say your name," I ordered, keeping the camera trained on his bleeding face, making sure the video was clear and usable as evidence. "Fuck you. Say your name, or I call the police right now and tell them you attacked me. Look at my throat." I angled the camera to show my neck, already showing the red marks from his fingers, marks that would turn into vivid dark bruises by morning. "I've got the evidence of assault right here on my body, and I'm betting Maya's not the only woman who could testify about what you've done. I found the emails, Darnell. I found the files on your laptop. I know about Jessica Martinez and her broken arm. I know about Tasha Williams and the concussion. I know about Keisha Brown and how she had to change her name and move to another state just to feel safe from you. I know everything." Darnell's face went pale, all the color draining out as he realized what I'd discovered. He knew I'd been on his laptop. He knew I'd found his secrets, his history, his pattern of abuse documented in his own hand. "Darnell," he muttered finally, touching the blood trickling down his face. "Darnell Williams." "And what did you just do to me, Darnell Williams?" You attacked me. You came into my house and attacked me. You're trespassing. You assaulted me with a deadly weapon." "Wrong answer." I turned the camera back to show my throat again, the marks already darkening to purple. "Let's try one more time. What did you do to me?" Darnell stared at the camera, and I could see him realizing the trap he was in. If he admitted to choking me, it was clear evidence of assault on video that could be used in court. But if he didn't, I had the physical marks and the recording anyway to prove what he'd done. "This isn't over," he snarled, his voice full of venom and barely controlled rage. "You think you're so smart? You think you can just come into my house, impersonate my wife, and—" "Your house?" I laughed, though it hurt my throat. "This is Maya's house, too. Her name is on the deed. Her money paid for half of it. And after tonight, she's filing for divorce and getting a restraining order. And if you come near her again, if you even think about hurting her or tracking her down, I will make sure everyone knows what you are. Your job, your reputation, your country club membership, your perfect life, all of it will be gone. Everyone will know that Darnell Williams is nothing but an abuser, a coward who beats women half his size to feel powerful." I called 911, keeping my phone camera trained on Darnell the entire time so I'd have an uninterrupted recording of everything. "I need to report a domestic assault," I said when the operator answered. "My name is Zara Johnson, and I'm at 1847 Oakmont Drive in Brookhaven. A man named Darnell Williams just attacked me and tried to strangle me. I need police and medical assistance immediately. I have the assault on video, and I have visible injuries. He's still here in the house, and I'm afraid he might attack me again." The police arrived within 8 minutes, 2 patrol cars, lights flashing red and blue, pulling up to the house that had looked so perfect and normal from the outside. I met them at the door and immediately showed them my throat, the bruises already vivid and dark against my skin, a perfect imprint of Darnell's fingers. I showed them the recording of Darnell admitting who he was and trying to justify his attack. I showed them my injured wrist, already swelling and turning purple. I showed them the blood on Darnell's head from where I'd hit him in self-defense. Then I showed them the real evidence, the laptop in Darnell's office, open to the folders full of photos documenting his systematic abuse of Maya, the videos of her crying and begging, the emails from Jessica, Tasha, and Keisha, detailing similar abuse and his threats to destroy them if they reported him. The 2 officers, one older white man with kind eyes, one younger black woman who looked at Darnell with barely concealed disgust, listened to everything. They took photos of my injuries. They watched my video. They looked through the laptop files, their expressions growing darker with each photo they saw. Darnell tried to spin a story about how I'd broken into his house without permission, how he'd only defended himself against an intruder, how he didn't know who I was or why I was there impersonating his wife. But the evidence was absolutely overwhelming and irrefutable. The laptop showed he'd been systematically abusing Maya for months, documenting it like some kind of sick hobby. The emails showed a clear pattern of violence against multiple women over the course of years. The video I'd taken showed him attacking me unprovoked, trying to strangle me while I begged him to stop. When they called Maya on her phone to verify the story and confirm that she'd asked me to switch places with her, she broke down crying and confirmed everything. The abuse, the fear, the switch, why we'd done it. They arrested Darnell for aggravated assault, attempted strangulation, and domestic violence. As they read him his rights and put him in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled and bloody, he looked back at me one last time with pure, concentrated hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and threatening even with police officers right there. "You hear me, bitch? This isn't over. I'll get out, and when I do—" "Keep threatening her, Mr. Williams," the female officer said sharply, making a note on her pad. "That'll look great in court when the prosecutor plays this body camera footage for the jury." They put him in the back of the patrol car, and I stood on the front porch watching the red and blue lights disappear down the street, taking the monster away from Maya's life. Hopefully, forever. After the police left and the EMTs had checked my injuries, minor bruising to the throat that would heal in a week or two, a badly sprained wrist that needed to be wrapped but wasn't broken, Some cuts from the shattered crystal, but nothing serious. I sat down on Maya's couch and just shook for 10 minutes, the adrenaline finally wearing off. Then I called Maya. She answered before the first ring even finished. Zara. Oh my God. I just talked to the police. They said, "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" I saw police cars through the window. I was so scared. I'm fine, Maya. It's done. He's arrested. It's over. It's finally over. Maya started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside her. Sobs that contained 3 years of fear and pain and trauma finally being released. Really? Her voice was broken, disbelieving. He's really arrested? They really took him away? Really? And Maya, I found so much evidence on his laptop, files with hundreds of photos and videos of what he did to you, all organized by date like he was proud of it. Emails from other women he hurt before you. Jessica Martinez, Tasha Williams, Keisha Brown. He's not getting out of this. There's too much evidence, too many victims. He's going to prison. I can't believe it. She was still crying, but now there was something else in her voice too. Relief. Hope. I can't believe it's actually over. I was so scared he'd hurt you. I was so scared something would go wrong and you'd... Something did go wrong, I admitted. He came home early and caught me looking at his laptop. He had hidden cameras in his office that I didn't know about. But Maya, we got him. He attacked me, tried to strangle me, and I got it all on video. We have everything we need to put him away. Come home, Maya whispered. Please come back to me. I need to see you. I need to know you're really okay. Give me 20 minutes to wrap up here with the police paperwork. 30 minutes later, I drove to my loft in my own car, my hands still shaking slightly on the steering wheel, my throat sore, my wrist throbbing. When I pulled up, Maya was waiting outside the building, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. The moment she saw me get out of the car, she ran to me and threw her arms around me, holding on like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. Thank you, she sobbed into my shoulder. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being brave enough to do what I couldn't do. Thank you for being my sister. That's what twins are for, I said, holding her just as tightly, ignoring the pain in my wrist and throat. We protect each other, always, forever. Twin promise, Maya whispered. Twin promise forever, I whispered back. But even as we stood there holding each other, I knew the fight wasn't completely over. Darnell would hire expensive lawyers. He'd try to get bail. He'd paint Maya as the aggressor and me as some kind of crazy intruder. He'd use his connections, his money, his charm to try to escape consequences. The real battle was just beginning. 3 days after Darnell's arrest, Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at me with fear in her eyes. Answer it, I said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. She answered. Hello? Maya, baby, it's me. Darnell. Calling from jail, his voice carefully modulated to sound gentle and remorseful. Don't hang up. Please. Just listen to me for 1 minute. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. That wasn't me. You know that's not who I really am, baby. You know me. You know I love you. Maya's hand trembled as she held the phone, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. Even after everything, even knowing what he'd done, there was a part of her that wanted to believe him. That's what abusers do. They make you doubt yourself, make you question your own reality. I've been under so much stress at work, Darnell continued, his voice smooth and persuasive. The Chicago deal falling through, the pressure from my boss, the financial strain. I took it out on you and that was wrong. I know that now. But baby, we can fix this. We can go to counseling together. I'll get help. I'll see a therapist. I'll do whatever it takes. Just drop the charges. Please. Give me another chance to be the husband you deserve." "You had chances," Maya said, her voice shaking. "For 6 months you had chances to stop hitting me. You chose not to." "That's not fair, Maya. You're making it sound so much worse than it was. I barely touched you most of the time. And sometimes you have to admit, you provoked me. You know you did. That night you questioned me about money in front of my friends? That dinner you burned when my boss was coming over? That time you talked back to me at your parents' house? You pushed my buttons. So I deserved it?" Maya's voice broke. "You're saying I deserve to be beaten?" No. That's not what I meant at all, baby. I'm just saying, relationships are complicated. Marriage is hard. We both made mistakes. We both could have done things differently. But I'm willing to forgive you for the things you did to provoke me if you'll forgive me for losing my temper. We can start fresh. We can be happy again like we were in the beginning." I grabbed the phone from Maya's shaking hand. "This is Zara. Maya's not dropping anything. You're going to prison, Darnell." "You." All the fake gentleness vanished from his voice instantly, replaced by pure venom. "You bitch. You destroyed my marriage. You came into my house without permission. You destroyed your own marriage when you put your hands on my sister the first time." "Maya, baby, please," he said, his voice switching back to false gentleness so quickly it was jarring. "Don't listen to her. She's poisoning you against me. She's always been jealous of what we have, jealous that you found happiness and she's still alone. She's trying to ruin us because she can't stand to see you happy." I hung up. Maya collapsed against me, sobbing. "He almost had me," she admitted. "For a second there, I almost believed him. I almost felt sorry for him." "That's what abusers do," I said, holding her. "They manipulate. They gaslight. They make you doubt your own reality and believe their version of events. But Maya, you know the truth. You have the bruises to prove the truth. Promise me you won't let me go back to him," she begged. "Even if I beg you. Even if I say I love him and I want to give him another chance. Promise me you won't let me do it." "I promise. Twin promise." 2 weeks after Darnell's arrest, he made bail. $500,000. His parents had put up their house as collateral. The day he got out, Maya's phone exploded with texts. They started coming in rapid succession, one after another, dozens of them within the first hour. "I'm home. Where are you?" "Maya, answer me right now." "This is ridiculous. You need to come home immediately." "You're embarrassing me. Everyone is asking where my wife is. People at work are talking. Do you know how that makes me look?" "Fine. Be that way. But remember, you're still legally my wife. I still have rights. You can't hide forever. Eventually you'll have to face me. I miss you, baby. Please come home. I'll be better. I promise." Then, an hour later, a text that made Maya's face go white with fear. "I drove by your sister's place today. Interesting loft she has. 3rd floor, right? Those big windows must let in a lot of light. I bet I could see right in from the street." Maya showed me the text with shaking hands. "He knows where you live. He's been watching your place." "He's trying to scare us," I said, though I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to document all of these texts and report them to the police. This is harassment and intimidation of a witness." We went to the police station that afternoon and filed reports about the threatening texts. The officer who'd arrested Darnell listened carefully and helped us get a restraining order that prohibited him from contacting Maya or coming within 500 feet of either of us. But as we left the station, Maya said what we were both thinking. A piece of paper isn't going to stop him if he really wants to hurt us. She was right. And that night, she was proved right in the most terrifying way. I woke at 3 a.m. to my phone ringing. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then Darnell's voice, low and menacing. I know you're in there. Both of you. I can see your lights on from here. My heart stopped. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window, carefully peering out through the curtains. There, parked across the street under a broken streetlight, was a car that looked exactly like Darnell's Mercedes. I'm calling the police right now, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound brave. Go ahead. By the time they get there, I'll be gone. But I'll come back, tomorrow night, or the night after, or the night after that. I'll always come back. You can't hide from me forever, Maya. You're my wife. You belong to me. And your sister? His voice turned even colder. She's going to pay for what she did to me, for ruining my life, for turning you against me. I'm going to make her sorry she ever got involved. The line went dead. I called 911 immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. By the time 2 patrol cars arrived 10 minutes later, the Mercedes was gone. The officers searched the area but couldn't find any sign of Darnell. He's violating his restraining order, one officer said. If we catch him, we can arrest him again, but we need to actually catch him in the act. For the next 2 weeks, Maya and I lived in constant fear. I installed extra deadbolts on my loft door, security cameras, motion sensor lights. We varied our routines, never going the same places at the same times. We saw cars that might be his everywhere we went. We jumped at every sound. Maya couldn't sleep. She'd lie awake all night, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps in the hallway. The dark circles under her eyes got deeper. She lost weight. She was jumpy and anxious all the time. This was what Darnell wanted. Even from outside, even with a restraining order, he was still controlling our lives, still making us afraid. Then his lawyer called with an offer. My client is willing to make you a very generous deal, the lawyer said, his voice smooth and professional. He'll plead guilty to simple assault, a misdemeanor, probation for 2 years, anger management classes, no jail time. In exchange, your sister agrees to drop the restraining order and doesn't testify about any prior incidents before the night of his arrest. Absolutely not. You should know that 3 other women have come forward claiming my client abused them in past relationships, the lawyer continued. But here's the thing. Those cases are all he said, she said situations. No physical evidence, no police reports filed at the time. And my client is a successful businessman with an impeccable reputation in this community. These women all have, he paused delicately, certain credibility issues. One has a restraining order against her from a previous partner. One has a DUI on her record. The jury will see a pattern here. Troubled women with questionable backgrounds targeting a successful black man who's worked hard his entire life. You're disgusting, I said. I'm realistic, Ms. Johnson. If this case goes to trial, it's going to get very ugly for your sister. Every detail of her life will be examined and picked apart. Every argument she and my client ever had. Every text message she sent. Every time she might have said or done something to provoke him. The defense will paint a picture of a troubled marriage where both parties share blame. Is that really what Ms. Maya wants? To have her entire life dissected in front of a jury? Your client is a serial abuser who's been terrorizing women for years. My client is a businessman who made some mistakes in a failing marriage. Big difference. Think about my offer, Ms. Johnson. 2 years probation versus a trial that could destroy your sister emotionally and still result in my client walking free. Which would you choose? I hung up, but his words haunted me for days. What if the jury believed Darnell? What if they saw him as the victim, a successful man being taken down by vindictive women? What if his expensive lawyers were good enough to create reasonable doubt? What if we lost? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jessica, Tasha, and Keisha, the other women Darnell had destroyed. What if we were their only chance at justice, too? What if losing this case meant he'd go free and hurt someone else? But I didn't know yet that those 3 women were about to change everything. That they were about to become our salvation. Jessica Martinez was the first to call. "I saw the news about Darnell's arrest," she said when I answered. "I need to talk to you, face to face, today, if possible." We met at a coffee shop in Midtown an hour later. Jessica was in her early 30s, strikingly beautiful, but there was a hardness in her eyes that spoke of trauma she'd survived. "Darnell and I dated 5 years ago," she began, stirring her untouched coffee. "For 8 months. It started like a fairy tale. Flowers delivered to my salon where I work. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd only read about. Weekend trips to Charleston and Savannah. He was charming, attentive, generous. He made me feel special, chosen, like I was the center of his world." She paused, staring into her coffee cup. "Then he convinced me to move into his place. He said my apartment was too far from his work, that we'd save money, that it was the next natural step in our relationship. That's when everything changed. He became controlling, wanted to know where I was every minute, got angry if I went anywhere without telling him first, started criticizing my clothes, my friends, the way I did my hair." "What happened to your arm?" I asked gently. She pulled up her sleeve, showing a scar that ran from her wrist to her elbow, slightly twisted where the bone had healed incorrectly. "He broke my arm in 3 places, slammed it in his car door because I smiled at a male waiter who was just doing his job. Then he drove me to the hospital himself and stood right there while I told the doctors I'd accidentally gotten my arm caught in the door. Made me repeat the story to every nurse and doctor who asked, watching me the whole time to make sure I didn't change it." "Did you try to press charges?" "I did. I went to the police station 2 days after I got out of the hospital. But Darnell has friends. A lieutenant named Morrison, who he plays golf with every Sunday. Morrison called me into his office personally and talked me out of filing charges. Said it would be my word against Darnell's. That Darnell was a respected businessman with no criminal record. That I'd be dragged through the mud, my personal life exposed, my credibility destroyed. That even if charges were filed, they probably wouldn't stick. And I believed him. I dropped it." Her hands were shaking as she set down her coffee cup. "But I kept evidence. I'm smarter than Darnell gave me credit for. I took photos of my injuries from every angle. Not just my arm, but all the other times too. The bruises, the marks, everything. I saved text messages where he apologized and promised to change. Voicemails where he said, 'I'm sorry, baby. I love you. It'll never happen again.' And I saved the voicemails where he threatened me too. Where he said, if I ever tried to destroy him, he'd make sure I never worked in Atlanta again. That he'd ruin my reputation, get me fired, make sure everyone knew what a lying whore I was." She reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive, sliding it across the table to me. "It's all on here. 5 years of evidence. I kept it hidden in a safety deposit box, afraid to do anything with it because I was terrified of what he'd do if he found out. But when I saw your sister on the news, when I saw another woman finally brave enough to stand up to him, I knew I had to help. We need to stop him together. He can't be allowed to keep doing this to women." "Why didn't you come forward before?" "Because I was scared. Darnell said if I ever tried to destroy him, he'd destroy me first. And he had the connections and resources to do it. I was just a hairstylist working at a strip mall salon. Who would believe me over him? Who would care?" She leaned forward, her eyes fierce and determined. "But I'm not scared anymore. I want to testify. I want to tell a jury exactly what he did to me, and I want to watch him go to prison for it." 2 days later, Tasha Williams called. She was a nurse at Grady Hospital, soft-spoken but with an inner strength that radiated from her. "I dated Darnell 3 years ago," she told me when we met at her apartment. "I should have known better. I work in the ER. I see domestic violence victims every single day. I know the warning signs. But somehow when it was happening to me, I couldn't see it clearly. Or maybe I saw it and didn't want to believe it was really happening." She showed me hospital records from a night shift 3 years ago. A concussion, facial bruising, a notation that the injuries were consistent with domestic violence. "He slammed my head against our kitchen wall because I questioned his spending," she said quietly. "He'd bought a $60,000 car without discussing it with me first, and when I asked about it, he lost his temper. Grabbed me by my hair and slammed my head into the wall over and over until I couldn't see straight. Then he took me to the hospital himself and told them I'd fallen down the stairs. Stood right there like Jessica said, watching to make sure I didn't tell the truth." Did the hospital staff suspect? Of course they did. They're trained to spot domestic violence. One nurse pulled me aside when Darnell went to move the car and begged me to tell her what really happened. But I was too scared. Darnell had already threatened me on the drive over. Said if I told anyone what he'd done, he'd kill me and make it look like an accident. Said he knew people who could make someone disappear and no one would ever find the body. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages. Hundreds of them over a 3-month period. I saved everything. Every apology. Every, "I love you, baby. I'm sorry. It'll never happen again." Every threat. Every time he said, "You made me do this," or "This is your fault for making me angry." I knew somehow, someday, I'd need this evidence. The next afternoon, Keisha Brown called. She'd moved to Jacksonville, Florida 2 years ago, and hadn't been back to Atlanta since. "I saw the news online," she said over FaceTime. "I'd been following the case from down here, debating whether I should get involved. Then I heard about Jessica and Tasha coming forward, and I knew I had to add my voice to theirs." Keisha's story was the most disturbing yet. She dated Darnell 6 years ago, before Jessica, before any of the others. She was his college girlfriend, his first serious relationship after he moved back to Atlanta from New York. "I almost married him," she said, her voice still raw with the memory. "He proposed after dating for 8 months. I said yes. We were planning the wedding. Then one night we had an argument about the guest list. I wanted to invite some of my college friends, and he said they weren't appropriate for the kind of wedding he wanted. When I insisted, he completely lost it." She pulled her shirt collar aside, showing a faint scar along her collarbone. "He came at me with a kitchen knife, said if I wouldn't listen to him about the wedding, maybe I wouldn't be around for the wedding at all. He held that knife to my throat and told me in excruciating detail exactly how he'd kill me if I ever disobeyed him again." "Oh my God. Did he cut you?" "Not on purpose. I struggled, tried to get away, and the knife sliced across my collarbone. It needed 12 stitches. Darnell drove me to the hospital and told them we'd been cooking together and I'd accidentally cut myself. I was too terrified to say anything different." She showed me a recording on her phone, audio from her phone that she'd started recording during arguments after that night, keeping the phone hidden in her pocket. "I started recording every conversation after the knife incident. I had a feeling I'd need evidence someday. On this recording, you can hear him clearly saying, 'I'll kill you, you understand? I will fucking kill you if you ever embarrass me like that again in front of my friends. I'll make it look like an accident and no one will ever know it was me.'" She'd left him 2 weeks after that, broken off the engagement, quit her job, and moved to Florida to get away from him. Changed her phone number, deleted all her social media, became a ghost. "I was too scared to press charges," she admitted. "He knew where my parents lived, where my sister lived. He'd already threatened them. So I just ran and tried to forget it ever happened. But I've been carrying this guilt for 6 years, wondering how many other women he heard after me because I was too scared to stop him. The prosecutor called me the next day after meeting with all 3 women. "This changes everything, Ms. Johnson," she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. With 4 victims spanning 6 years, with all this documented evidence, with the clear pattern of behavior, we can prove intent. We can prove this isn't a man who just lost his temper once. This is a serial predator who specifically targets, isolates, and terrorizes women, who uses the same tactics over and over, who escalates from control to violence to threats of murder. We're adding additional charges: witness intimidation, terroristic threats, assault with a deadly weapon for what he did to Keisha. Darnell's lawyer called 2 hours later. His tone was completely different now. The cockiness was gone. "We need to talk about a plea deal." "No deals," I said firmly. "My client is willing to plead guilty to aggravated assault in the 1st degree. He'll accept 7 years in prison, eligible for parole in 5. Not enough. This goes to trial, and the jury is going to hear from all 4 women. They're going to hear about Jessica's broken arm and Tasha's concussion and Keisha's knife attack, and all the evidence these women saved for years because they knew nobody would believe them without proof." "You're making a mistake, Ms. Johnson. Think about what your sister will have to endure in a trial." "My sister is ready to testify. So are Jessica, Tasha, and Keisha. And the jury is going to hear every single thing Darnell did over 6 years. Every broken bone, every threat, every time he made a woman fear for her life. They're going to see exactly what he is. See you in court." I hung up, feeling truly powerful for the first time since this nightmare began. Darnell tried calling Maya one more time that night. She answered on speaker so I could hear. "You're really going to do this?" His voice was angry now, all pretense of remorse gone. "You're really going to ruin my life? Destroy everything I've worked for my entire career?" "You ruined your own life when you hit me the first time," Maya said, her voice steady. "I gave you everything: a beautiful house, a luxury car, designer clothes, a lifestyle most women would kill for. And this is how you repay me? By trying to send me to prison? By parading me in front of a jury like some kind of criminal?" "You are a criminal, Darnell. You're being dramatic. I pushed you around a few times when you made me angry. So what? That's what happens in relationships when people fight. But you want to destroy my entire life over it? Make me a felon? Ruin my career? Yes. You vindictive bitch. You and your psycho sister. You—" Maya hung up. And for the first time since this entire ordeal began, she smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. "I'm not scared of him anymore," she said, looking at me with wonder in her voice. "For the first time in 3 years, I'm not scared of him. He can't hurt me anymore." The trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks in late summer. The courtroom was packed every single day. Reporters, domestic violence advocates, women from support groups, even some of Darnell's former co-workers who came to watch their successful colleagues fall from grace. Darnell wore expensive suits every day, his hair perfectly groomed, looking polished and professional. His high-priced defense attorney painted him as a successful businessman being targeted by a coordinated group of vengeful ex-partners who'd conspired together to destroy him. But then the prosecution began presenting their evidence. First came the photos of Maya's bruises, projected on a large screen for the jury to see in vivid detail. Close-ups of her swollen eye, her split lip, her bruised throat, her ribs covered in purple and yellow and green marks. Photos taken the night I'd brought her to my loft, dated and time-stamped. Then came the videos from Darnell's own laptop. The jury watched in horrified silence as video after video played, Maya cowering on the floor while Darnell's shadow loomed over her, his hand raised to strike. Maya sobbing, apologizing, begging him to stop. Maya promising to be better, to try harder, to never make him angry again. Several jurors were crying by the time the videos ended. The prosecutor stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, these videos were found on the defendant's personal laptop, organized in folders by date. He didn't just abuse his wife, he documented it. He kept trophies of his violence like some people keep photo albums of vacations. Darnell's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Then came Jessica Martinez. She walked to the witness stand with her head held high, and when she was sworn in, her voice was clear and steady. Ms. Martinez, can you tell the jury about your relationship with the defendant? I dated Darnell Williams 5 years ago for 8 months. It started wonderful. He was charming, romantic, generous. Then I moved into his place, and he became controlling and violent. Can you describe the incident that ended your relationship? Jessica pulled up her sleeve, showing the scar on her arm to the jury. He broke my arm in 3 places because I smiled at a male waiter who was serving our table. He slammed my arm in his car door, then drove me to the hospital and made me lie to every doctor and nurse, saying I'd accidentally caught my arm in the door. He stood there watching me the whole time to make sure I didn't tell the truth. Did you try to press charges? Yes. But Darnell had connections in the police department. A lieutenant talked me out of it, said it would be my word against his, that I'd be destroyed in court. So I dropped it. But I kept evidence. The prosecution entered into evidence dozens of photos of Jessica's injuries, not just her broken arm, but bruises from other incidents, text messages from Darnell apologizing and promising to change, voicemails with threats. He said if I ever tried to destroy him, he'd make sure I never worked in Atlanta again. Jessica testified, her voice shaking now, that he'd tell everyone I was a liar, a gold digger, a crazy woman trying to extort money from him. And I believed him because he had the power and connections to do exactly that. Darnell's lawyer tried to discredit her on cross-examination, pointing out that she'd waited 5 years to come forward, suggesting she was motivated by seeing Maya's case in the news. So you're claiming, Ms. Martinez, that you just happened to keep all this supposed evidence for 5 years, and then coincidentally decided to contact Ms. Johnson right after her sister's case became public. I kept the evidence because I knew no one would believe me without proof, Jessica said firmly. And I came forward when I did because I saw another woman finally brave enough to stand up to him. I knew I had to help, that together we might actually be able to stop him. Then came Tasha Williams. The nurse walked to the stand in her hospital scrubs, having come directly from her shift in the ER. She was calm, professional, devastating in her testimony. I dated Darnell Williams 3 years ago. I'm an ER nurse at Grady Hospital. I see domestic violence victims every single day. I know the signs. And yet when it was happening to me, I couldn't see it clearly. Or I saw it and didn't want to believe it. Can you tell the jury about the night of November 15th, 3 years ago? Darnell slammed my head against our kitchen wall multiple times because I questioned his spending. He'd bought a $60,000 car without discussing it with me. When I asked about it, he grabbed me by my hair and slammed my head into the wall until I had a concussion. Then he took me to the hospital and made me lie about how it happened. She showed the jury her hospital records, the notation about injuries, consistent with domestic violence, the discharge instructions for concussion care. Why didn't you tell the truth to the medical staff? Because on the drive to the hospital, Darnell threatened to kill me if I told anyone. He said he knew people who could make someone disappear and no one would ever find the body. I believed him, so I lied. The prosecution entered text messages, hundreds of them, showing Darnell's pattern of apology and threats, of love bombing followed by intimidation. Then came Keisha Brown, testifying via video link from Florida. Her testimony was the most chilling yet. She described the night Darnell had held a knife to her throat, the scar she still carried 6 years later. She played the audio recording for the jury. "I'll kill you, you understand? I will fucking kill you if you ever embarrass me like that again in front of my friends. I'll make it look like an accident and no one will ever know it was me." The courtroom was absolutely silent except for Darnell's recorded voice, cold and threatening, explaining in detail exactly how he would murder Keisha and get away with it. When the recording ended, several jurors looked at Darnell with undisguised horror. "After that night, I quit my job, broke off our engagement, and moved to Florida," Keisha testified, tears streaming down her face. "I changed my phone number. I deleted all my social media. I essentially erased myself from the internet because I was so terrified he'd find me and carry out his threat." Finally, Maya took the stand. She looked small and vulnerable up there, but her voice was strong as she began her testimony. "I met Darnell Williams at my parents' house on Thanksgiving 3 years ago. He seemed perfect, successful, charming, respectful. We dated for a year before getting married. For the first year of our marriage, everything seemed wonderful. Then things started to change." "When did the abuse begin?" "About 18 months ago, so 6 months after we got married. It started small, pushing me during arguments, grabbing my arm too hard, squeezing my wrist until I cried. He'd apologize afterward, bring me flowers, promise it would never happen again. And I believed him because I loved him and I wanted to believe him." "Did it escalate?" "Yes." Maya's voice broke slightly. "It always escalated. The pushing became hitting. The hitting became kicking. 2 weeks before my sister switched places with me, he kicked me so hard he cracked 2 of my ribs. I couldn't go to the doctor because I was afraid of what he'd do if he found out." "What did the defendant say when you tried to leave?" "He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd kill me. He said it so calmly, like he was commenting on the weather. His eyes were dead and cold, and I knew he meant it. I believed I would die if I tried to escape." "Why did you ask your twin sister to switch places with you?" "Because I was terrified and desperate, and I didn't know what else to do. I thought if we could get evidence of his abuse on video, the police would have to take it seriously. My sister was brave enough to do what I couldn't, face him and fight back." Maya looked directly at Darnell for the first time since taking the stand. "He told me I was lucky to have him, that no one else would want me, that if I left, he'd make sure I lost everything, my job, my home, my family. He said he'd tell everyone I was crazy, that I was the abuser, that I'd made it all up. And I believed him for 3 years. I believed I deserved what he did to me." Her voice got stronger. "But I didn't deserve it. No one deserves to be beaten by someone who claims to love them. No one deserves to live in fear in their own home. And I'm done being afraid of him." When Maya stepped down, half the courtroom was in tears, including 3 of the jurors. Darnell's lawyer did his best to paint a different picture. He called character witnesses, Darnell's business associates, his golf buddies, his parents, who all testified that Darnell was a good man, a successful businessman, someone who'd never shown any signs of violence. He tried to suggest that all 4 women had coordinated their stories, that they had financial motives or personal vendettas, that Darnell was being persecuted because he was a successful black man. But the evidence was overwhelming. The photos, the videos, the recordings, the medical records, the text messages, it all painted an undeniable picture of a man who'd been systematically abusing women for 6 years. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury came back. "On the charge of aggravated assault against Maya Williams, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the charge of domestic violence?" "Guilty." "On the charge of terroristic threats against Keisha Brown?" "Guilty." "Guilty. Guilty. Guilty." On every single count. Darnell's face went white. He looked back at Maya, at me, at Jessica and Tasha in the gallery, with pure hatred and disbelief. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Sentencing day. The courtroom was packed again for sentencing. Darnell sat at the defense table, noticeably thinner than he'd been at trial, his expensive suit hanging looser on his frame. Before the judge pronounced sentence, she allowed victim impact statements. Jessica stood first. Darnell Williams broke my arm and my spirit. For 5 years, I've lived with the physical and emotional scars of what he did to me. I hope the sentence you give him today sends a message that men who hurt women will face real consequences. Tasha spoke next. Because of Darnell Williams, I still flinch when someone raises their voice. I still have panic attacks when I hear footsteps behind me. I hope he spends a very long time in prison thinking about what he's done to all of us. Keisha, still via video from Florida, said simply, Darnell Williams held a knife to my throat and threatened to kill me. I've spent 6 years looking over my shoulder, afraid he'd find me and carry out that threat. I hope I never have to be afraid of him again. Finally, Maya stood. Darnell Williams convinced me that I was worthless without him, that I was lucky he'd chosen me, that I deserved the beatings because I'd provoked him. For 3 years I believed those lies, but I know the truth now, and I hope that every day he spends in prison, he thinks about the 4 women whose lives he tried to destroy, and realizes that we were stronger than him all along. Then the judge spoke. Mr. Williams, you have been found guilty on multiple counts of aggravated assault, domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon, and terroristic threats. I have reviewed the evidence presented at trial, and I must say, in 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such clear evidence of deliberate, calculated, systematic abuse. She paused, looking at Darnell with undisguised contempt. You are not a man who simply lost his temper in a moment of passion. You are a predator who systematically targeted, isolated, and terrorized vulnerable women over the course of many years. You used your intelligence, your charm, your resources, and your connections to escape consequences for your actions. You documented your own crimes like trophies. You threatened to kill women who dared to stand up to you. Darnell's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. He's a productive member of society who— Sit down, counselor. The judge's voice was ice. Your client has terrorized at least 4 women that we know of. How many others were too afraid to come forward? How many other women are still living in fear because of what your client did to them? She turned back to Darnell. Mr. Williams, I hereby sentence you to 20 years in state prison on each count, to run concurrently. You will not be eligible for parole for the first 15 years. Upon release, you will be required to register as a domestic violence offender for the rest of your life, and you will be permanently prohibited from contacting any of your victims or their families. 20 years. Longer than anyone had expected. Longer than the prosecution had asked for. Maya grabbed my hand, squeezing so tight it hurt, tears streaming down both our faces. Darnell stood as the bailiffs approached to take him into custody. He turned to look at us one last time, and I expected to see hatred in his eyes. Instead, I saw something worse. Emptiness. Like he still didn't understand what he'd done wrong, why he was being punished for what he saw as his right to control and hurt the women in his life. You ruined my life, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Maya stood up, her voice clear and strong enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. No, Darnell. You ruined your own life the moment you decided you had the right to put your hands on me. You did this to yourself. The bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, and this time, we knew he wouldn't be coming back for a very long time. Epilogue. 1 year later, Maya stood in the kitchen of her house now, solely in her name after the divorce was finalized. The house where she'd been terrorized and trapped had been transformed into her sanctuary. She'd repainted every single room in bright, cheerful colors that Darnell never would have allowed. She'd bought new furniture, gotten rid of anything that reminded her of him. She'd turned his office into an art studio where she painted for hours every weekend, reclaiming the creativity he'd tried to kill in her. "How do you feel?" I asked, watching her move confidently through the space, no longer trying to make herself small. "Free," Maya said, and her smile was radiant, genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes. "For the first time in years, I actually feel free. I can breathe again. I can be myself again." She'd been in therapy twice a week for the past year, working through the trauma with a specialized counselor who understood domestic violence. She'd quit her old job where some of her co-workers had sided with Darnell and started her own marketing consultancy that was already thriving. She'd reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with during the marriage, friends Darnell had isolated her from. She'd joined a support group for domestic violence survivors, where she was now a mentor to newly escaped women. She'd even started dating again, carefully and slowly, with a kind man who respected her boundaries and never once raised his voice to her. She was healing. She was herself again, not the woman Darnell had tried to break and destroy, but the vibrant, confident, creative person she'd always been meant to be. "Thank you," she said, coming over to hug me. "For everything. For believing me when I called you that night. For not judging me for staying as long as I did. For being brave enough to do what I couldn't do. For saving my life. For being my sister." "Always," I said, linking my pinky with hers the way we'd done since we were 7 years old. "Twin promise. Twin promise forever," Maya said. We stood there in her sunny kitchen, two identical women who'd been through hell and come out the other side together, stronger than ever. Maya had her life back, her freedom, her future, her hope. And Darnell was in prison, exactly where he belonged, facing the consequences of his actions for the first time in his life. Sometimes being identical twins meant more than just sharing a face. It meant sharing strength when one of you had none left. It meant fighting battles the other couldn't fight. It meant never, ever giving up on the person who was, quite literally, your other half. "I got a call yesterday," Maya said, "from another woman. She saw our story on the news a few months ago. She's been suffering in silence for 2 years with an abusive husband. She wants to leave but doesn't know how. She's terrified." "What did you tell her?" "I told her about a twin sister who loved me enough to risk her own safety to save me. I told her that escape is possible, that abusers don't change but survivors do, that she deserves better, deserves safety, deserves a life without fear, that she's not alone." "What's she going to do?" "She's leaving him next week. I'm helping her find a place to stay, connecting her with resources, lawyers, therapists, support groups, helping her make a safety plan. She's not alone anymore. None of us are alone anymore." I looked at my sister, my brave, strong, incredible sister who'd survived hell and come out the other side determined to help other women escape too, and felt pride swell in my chest so big it almost hurt. "You're amazing, you know that?" "No," Maya said, her eyes shining with tears of joy instead of pain for once. "We're amazing. We did this together, and we're going to keep doing it together, helping other women, showing them that escape is possible, that they don't have to stay trapped and afraid." She was right. We'd done it together. That's what twins do. We protect each other. We fight for each other. And when one of us can't fight anymore, the other one steps in and fights for both. Forever. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, You can support me by sending us super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.